You make me laugh so much.
Hi, Cousin Kate.
Hi, Cousin Dominic.
How are your beetroots?
My beetroots are great. I was just thinking, imagine if I said something really weird, like you were like, hi, Cousin Kate, and I was like, hi, Brother Dominic. Like, it'd be...
No, I'm carrots and you're beetroots.
Correct, I am beetroots. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I'm frustrated by my camera. It's not even a filter, it's just what it looks like, and I look like a beetroot. So I've been distressed about that all day, and Dom's been taking me through some cognitive behavioral therapies to try to re-energize my synapses so that I'm able to get through this pod. So thank you so much.
Oh, Lord, I doubt anyone would ever pay me to be their therapist, though. You get a couple of bevies in me and I sure as hell shit think I'm the next Oprah.
I love it. That's why, I mean, we have had a mini therapy session prior to this. So I'm feeling much better. I'm really excited about today's story. I'm here for it.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling psychologically safe and strong at the moment, because I'm about to tear you down into smithereens, because this story is evil incarnate.
I'm really excited because I know we said you mentioned in a previous episode that we feel like we're being too safe. Let's just get our listeners and lull them into a false sense of security and then just fuck them up. Yeah, and that's what you're going to do today, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, you've all had it easy. We've been playing it nice. I have dug up a good old-fashioned just horror story of a human being. So please, you are warned. If blood, gore, guts, rape, all the worst things in the world, which we know are serious, you're about to get the full spectrum of it in one single story. You're warned. Please... Actually, keep listening. Don't log off.
Yeah, just listen, but just know that that's going to happen. That's all. You don't have to like it, but listen all the way and then subscribe to us and then follow us on all our socials. And it's simple. It's such a simple solution.
Absolutely. So as now we've sold this as the greatest story of all time.
And then you're like, there was this guy, Billy Bob from the mountains, and he liked to eat fresh beef that he grew on his farm. The end.
And he grew beetroots.
Yeah, and that's what I eat purely, apparently, to turn out looking like this.
All right, Kate, so here we go. This is the absolute horror story of Hamilton Howard, or also known as Albert Fish.
Okay. Yep.
Now, Albert Fish was born in Washington, D.C. on May 19th, 1870, so back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also known as the Grey Man, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and probably most famously as the original Boogey Man.
Ooh, OG. OGBM.
Absolutely.
Makes it sound like bowel movement. That's okay.
We're all here for that.
We're all here for that. We are the OGBM podcast. So, boom.
Now, Fish once boasted that he had children in every state, and at one time stated his number of victims was about 100. However, it is not known whether he was referring to rapes or cannibalization, nor is it known if the statement was truthful whatsoever. We all know that people like this love to embellish and claim all sorts of things, which makes them really unreliable. His crimes were dramatized in the 2000 film. Yeah.
I love the 2000 film. That's great.
Stroke number one for today. His crimes were dramatized in the 2007 film, The Grey Man, starring Patrick Bachau.
Both.
Yeah.
Yep.
As Albert Fish. So go watch that. I know you love a bit of movie trivia, Kate.
Well, I do. I love a bit of movie. Have you seen that? Out of interest?
Okay. I have not. I wanted to do all of this research and everything and do the story, and then I was going to treat myself and watch it if I honestly had the stomach for it.
Exactly. By the sense that, what you were talking about, I don't think it's not making me want to watch it, but hey, we'll see what happens.
Here we go. So let's do a bit of childhood, shall we? Let's find out where Fish comes from.
Please, that's where they all get fucked up. So let's see what happened there.
Yeah. So Fisher's father was American of English ancestry, and his mother was Scots-Irish American. His father was 43 years older than his mother, and 75 years old at the time of Albert Fisher's birth.
Wow.
Dad D.
Daddy, my grandpappy, like
Yeah.
he old. I'm not being ageist, but in the spectrum of what we're talking about. Damn.
Yeah. Be buying diapers together. How lovely.
It's a bonding activity.
Yeah. Now, Fish was the youngest child and had 3 living siblings. I never understood what that meant, but I'm assuming that he had some that had died,
Okay.
opposite of living.
Gotcha. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, his 3 siblings were Walter, Annie, and Edwin. But he wished to be known as Albert after a dead sibling and to escape the nickname Ham and Eggs that he was given at an orphanage in which he spent much of his childhood. So he chose the name Albert.
Okay.
All right.
Did Ham and Eggs just didn't do it for him?
No.
Okay.
Green Eggs was taken. Now, Fisher's family had a history of mental illness. His uncle suffered from mania. One of his brothers was confined in a state mental hospital, which Kate's done a lovely episode on. Go back and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even listen too.
I mean, either or. However you digest a podcast, preferably listen, but whatever.
And his sister Annie was diagnosed with a mental affliction, whatever the fuck that means, because obviously back in the day they knew nothing.
Yeah.
3 other relatives were diagnosed with mental illnesses, and his mother had an oral and or visual hallucinations. So,
okay.
Yeah, not great.
Yeah, the environment's not the most conducive to maybe a happy upbringing.
Now, Fisher's father, 75-year-old Randall, was a riverboat captain. I'm sorry, you're screwed if your dad's a riverboat captain. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But by 1870, he became a fertilizer manufacturer.
Excellent.
Now, the elder fish, I love this. The elder fish died in 1875 at Washington's 6th Street station of a heart attack. The Congressional Cemetery records showed that he died on October 16th, 1875, and was buried on October 19th, 1875, in whatever grave it was. Who really cares? Fisher's mother then put her son into St. John's Orphanage in Washington, where he was frequently abused. So mother was not well. She put Albert, obviously, into an orphanage because she didn't think she could take care of him, which, look, possibly a great kindness that could normally be done, but maybe orphanages at this time, not the greatest place.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
Now, Fish began to enjoy the physical pain, he says, and the beatings that were brought upon him. Of his time at the orphanage, Fish remarked, "I was there till I was nearly 9, and that's where I got started wrong. We were unmercifully whipped. I saw boys doing many things they should not have done."
This guy, sometimes, I understand we're going to get to the point where I'm going to be completely repulsed by this guy, but as a 9-year-old kid, you got to be like, this sucks. You've really had a rough start.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing can take that away. Right? Now, by 1880, so that's 5 years after his father has passed away and probably when he was first put into the orphanage, Fisher's mother had a government job and was able to remove Fish from the orphanage. In 1882, at age 12, he began a relationship with a telegraph boy. The youth introduced Fish to such practices as urolgenia, drinking urine, and coprophagia, eating feces.
Okay.
Fish began visiting public baths where he could watch other boys undress and spent a great portion of his weekends on these visits. Throughout his life, he would write obscene letters to women whose names he acquired from classified advertising and matrimonial agencies. So, yeah.
Okay, so he was into a bit of everything.
Absolutely. Right. Was obviously exposed to certain things that, really most people should never even see, or not until you're a hell of a lot older and you can make that choice consensually. So this poor Albert Fish from a young age has had a pretty rough start, as you said.
That's right.
Early adulthood, and, as his criminal sort of career kicks off, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
By 1890, at age 20, Fisher arrives in New York City. And he said at that point he became a prostitute and began raping young boys.
Jesus.
In 1898, his mother arranged a marriage for him with a woman named Anna Marie Hoffman, who was 9 years his junior. And they ended up having 6 children together: Albert, Anna, Gertrude, Eugene, John, and Henry.
Wow. Hang on. How old was he? So how old would she have been? Okay, great. So she's 11.
No, 6 years.
Oh,
sorry, no, 9 years. You're right. 9 years, yeah.
Is that again 11, 12, 13,
Yeah.
14, 15? Yeah, it's 20. Sorry. She's 11 and they had 6 kids.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not all at 11, but yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I'm also not a police officer, but I don't think that's right. 11-year-old and a 20-year-old. I don't like it.
Yeah. Very different time, not that excuses anything, but
sure.
Look what his parents, the 45-year age gap that he grew up with, that they know. His mother's not well. Yeah, anyway, so my heart goes out to Anna, the mother.
Yeah.
Well, the woman that he married. Now, throughout 1898, Fish worked as a house painter. He said he continued molesting children, mostly boys younger than the age of 6. He later recounted an incident in which a male lover took him, to a waxworks museum where Fish was fascinated by a bisection of a penis. So bisection, obviously, it's like cut down the side, down the middle, so you can sort of see the internal workings of it all.
Yeah, okay.
And it's just a wax model, so it's not a real one, but he was really fascinated by that sort of internal anatomy.
Right. Why do I feel like that's going to be important?
Well, after that, he says he became obsessed with sexual mutilation.
Okay.
In 1903, he was arrested for grand larceny and convicted, and he was incarcerated in Sing Sing. I love that. I don't sing it as well as
the cast of the producers.
Yeah, the cast of producers. Uma Thurman, she sang it well, and of course many others.
Yeah.
But he's getting obviously he's doing a lot of evil, horrible things already by this point.
A lot of weird shit. Yeah, there's a lot going on for this guy.
They, he did have some run-ins with the law as well. So, interesting.
Sorry to interrupt. Is grand larceny? Is that theft, stealing money?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Now, around 1910, while he was working in Wilmington, Delaware, Fish met a 19-year-old man named Thomas Kedden. He took Kedden to where he was staying, and the two began a sadomasochistic relationship. It is unclear. Do I need to tell you what sadomasochistic is?
Is that like doms and subs? Or is it a bit different? Okay.
Yeah. It's a similar thread, but it's a pleasure from sexual pain, and there is a dynamic between people, but it takes it a little bit further than what general sort of BDSM or DOMs and subs can do. It's to think of it as a spectrum of intensity or activity. Okay. There's lots. It's very colourful and rich.
Got you. And would that be a little bit more intense on that spectrum? Right, okay.
Yeah. We're going into the full-blowns of everything.
Right.
Now, it is unclear whether or not Fish forced Kedden to do these things, but in his confession, he implies that the man was intellectually disabled. Is Thomas Kedden.
Oh.
After 10 days, Fish took Kedden to an old farmhouse where he began to torture him. The torture took place over 2 whole weeks.
Oh.
Fish eventually tied Kedden up and cut off half of his penis.
Oh my God. I was like, he's going to do that at some point. If he's fascinated by this waxworks, he's going to do it, and there it is. There's half the peen.
And in his words, he says, "I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me." Ugh.
I can't imagine he would be thrilled that you've just cut his pecker off. Oh, wowee. Okay.
I think throughout this story, what really struck me is we're going to hear a lot of Albert Fischer's own recounts of what happened and his own words, which both is probably too much, but I find it really, really fascinating because we don't often get to hear such description and such specific things that he enjoyed, what he really, really liked, which I think gives us a lot of insight into the difference between somebody that accidentally hit and run somebody, or this is such a pure example of someone that really is just born bad or born evil, or is has no empathy or emotion, and
there's just no limits by the sound of it. There's just morbid fascination and will do whatever, and doesn't as you say, no empathy and no I find it much more fascinating if you do hear the account of the person that committed the crimes, because people can speculate and talk and say these are the facts of the the crime, but if you're hearing it from the person who did it, you kind of really know, how could you do that, like why did you do that? And so I'm looking,
and we can never, we're just not people that can relate or understand.
I mean, I hope not. If you're listening to this and you're feeling like you can relate, please think about it.
000.
Something.
He says he originally intended to kill Kedden, cut up his body and take it home, but he feared the hot weather would draw attention to him. So instead, Fish poured peroxide over the wound, wrapped it in a Vaseline-covered handkerchief, left a $10 bill, kissed Kedden goodbye and left. He said he took the first train I could to get back home. I never heard what became of him or tried to find out. So Thomas survived this encounter, but...
Oh, my God. So just left him in a barn. Look, I'm really busy. Here's $10. So if you want to get a taxi or something, whatever, take this $10. It's my treat.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Wow.
And we're just at the beginning, okay?
I know. That's what I'm now getting slightly concerned about. So just at the start.
Now, in January 1917, Fisher's wife left him for a man named John Strobe, a handyman who boarded with the Fish family. Fish then had to raise his children as a single parent. So she left without the kids, not with them. After his arrest, Fish told a newspaper that when his wife left him, she took nearly every possession the family owned. He began to have auditory hallucinations, and he once wrapped himself in a carpet, saying that he was following the instructions of John the Apostle.
Okay. Was John the Apostle into carpets? Is that maybe he was into people wrapping themselves in carpets? Carpets. It's mad. It's absolutely crazy. Get out of that carpet, Albert.
It was about this time that Fish began to indulge in self-harm. He would embed needles into his groin and abdomen. After his arrest, X-rays revealed that Fish had at least 29 needles lodged in his pelvic region. He also hit himself repeatedly with a nail-studded paddle and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into his anus and set it alight.
Wow.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's not funny, but your face then was like, whoo!
I was just trying to process that a little bit. Oh, my goodness. That's not pleasant.
No. Now, I don't have a photo of that exact one, but I do have a photo of the paddle that he beat himself with. And I also have a photo of the pelvic x-ray that they took with all the needles that they found in his body, which will be shared on our socials. So please go find it.
Whoa.
If you dare.
If you dare. Morbid fascination. I must see it.
Yeah. Now, while Fish was never thought to have physically attacked or abused his children, his own, biological children, he did encourage them and their friends to paddle his buttocks with the same nail-studded paddle he used to abuse himself. He soon developed a growing obsession with cannibalism as well, often preparing himself a dinner consisting solely of raw meat and sometimes even serving it to his children.
There's no limits. I'm starting to understand this now. There is no limits for this person.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
exactly. And you almost become numb to it. I read this just going, is this too much? And jokes aside, I was like, oh, I've done some pretty lighthearted-ish type, more fear-focused stories recently, but I don't think I've ever heard of quite a story like this before. And I kind of wanted to just go full hog from the start, so we don't need to dwell on the horrible pieces, but
definitely. Yeah. I'm intrigued. I want to see where it goes. Like we've started at like 100. Yeah. That's what I would think is 100, but I suspect that there's more from Albert. Oh.
Yes, well, things escalate now. So in about 1919, Fish stabbed an intellectually disabled boy in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. He chose people who were either mentally handicapped. I don't know how I feel about using that word anymore, but I'm just going by what was initially found in this article. I just wanted to call that out. Or African Americans as his victims, explaining that he assumed these people would not be missed when killed. I think this is very representational, good representation of some people at that time, and just the misunderstanding, lack of knowledge. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Fish would later claim to have occasionally paid boys to procure other children for him. Fish tortured, mutilated, and murdered young children with his implements of hell, they were called, which consisted of a meat cleaver, a butcher knife, and a small handsaw.
None of those should be used on people.
No, ever. Now, on July 11th, 1924, Fish found 8-year-old Beatrice Keel playing alone on her parents' farm on Staten Island, New York. He offered her money to come and help him look for rhubarb. She was about to leave the farm when her mother chased Fish away. Fish left but returned later to the Keel's barn, where he tried to sleep but was discovered by Beatrice's father and forced to leave. Thank goodness. 3 days later, Fish killed Francis Mcdonald, also on Staten Island. During 1924, the 50-year-old Fish, suffering from psychosis, felt that God was commanding him to torture and sexually mutilate children. So he's just going on a bit of a rampage.
And look, whoever your God is or whatever your beliefs are, I don't think that they would say that. I really don't think that a God would say, can you please do these absolutely horrific things? That's more of a devil thing to me. But even then, don't listen. Don't do it.
Now, shortly before his abduction of Grace Budd, now we'll come back to Grace Budd. Grace Budd's kind of a key figure in Albert Fischer's story.
Okay.
Fish attempted to test his implements of hell on a child he had been molesting named Cyril Quinn. Quinn and his friend were playing a box ball on a sidewalk when Fish asked them if they had eaten lunch. When they said that they had not, he invited them into his apartment for sandwiches. While the two boys were wrestling on Fish's bed, they dislodged his mattress, and underneath was a knife, a small handsaw, and a meat cleaver. They became very frightened and ran out of the apartment. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I would probably do that too.
Fish did remarry on February 6th, 1930 in Waterloo, New York, to a lady named Estella Wilcox, but divorced only after 1 week.
Oh, okay.
Fish was arrested in May 1930 for sending an obscene letter to a woman who answered an advertisement for a maid. Following that arrest and one in 1931, he was sent to Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital for observation. And we all know Bellevue.
Sure.
Bellevue, look, actually, we should do an episode just on Bellevue and the people that have been there, because it is,
It's the who's who.
Yeah.
The who's who of cuckoo. That's who it is.
Here's what I found.
Put that as the title of the episode.
Yes, absolutely. I need to write that down. The Who's Who of Cuckoo.
Cuckoo.
God, it just comes to me.
Mm.
Oh.
You are genius, Kate. I've said it all along.
I think I just need it. I think my brain had just like, I don't know, it was starting to, I don't know, shut down based on thinking about some of these things that Albie Fischer's conducting. So it just came out of my subconscious.
All right, now let's move on to the murder of Grace Budd. All right, I mentioned that she was a key figure in this story, so let's get into it. On May 25th, 1928, so we're going slightly back in time. This was before he was admitted into Bellevue. Fish saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country. Edward Budd. Address." And on May 28th, Fish, then 58 years old, visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring this Edward, who took out the advertisement.
Yeah.
He later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. Fish introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. He promised to hire Budd and his friend Willie and said he would send for them in a few days. Fish failed to show up, but he sent a telegram to the Budd family apologising and set a later date.
Right.
Now, when Fish returned, he met Edward's younger sister, Grace Budd. He apparently changed his intended victim from Edward to Grace and quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party. He convinced the parents, Delia Flanagan and Albert Budd, the first, to let Grace accompany him to the party that evening. The elder, Albert Budd, was a porter for the United States Equitable Life Assurance Society. I don't know why I decided to include that bit, but I just thought I'd just let you know.
Yeah, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah, what was Albert Budd up to? This is a long story, folks, so I have gotten so many sources for this and chopped and changed things. So there might be some redundant or superfluous info here.
That's okay. But we've got Grace Budd going to the niece's party because that's right. Not sus at all. That's totally fine. Weird. A grown man taking another kid to a kid's birthday party that they've never met. No worries.
Now, Edward and Grace, they had a younger sister as well, Beatrice, and they also had two older brothers. So Edward was one of them and George. Albert Budd II was a younger brother. So it was quite a big family. There was a lot of them.
And lots of Albert Budds.
Yes, there's lots of Alberts around. Now, Grace did end up leaving with Fish that day, but she would never return. Now, the police arrested 66-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope on September 5th, 1930 as a suspect in Grace's disappearance. This Charles Edward Pope was accused by Pope's estranged wife, and he ended up spending 108 days in jail between his arrest and trial. But he was later found not guilty.
Okay.
So, interestingly, that, this total stranger, Albert Fish, they'd only met him twice, had agreed to take Grace away. She goes missing, and he wasn't immediately suspected. It was this other, well and truly disturbed person. But
yeah, golly, okay.
Now, we know that our friend Albert Fish loves to write letters.
He does, just to anybody who'll listen. And the more explicit and disgusting, the better. Now,
a letter was written to the mother of Grace Budd, Delia, if you remember.
Yes.
In November 1934, an anonymous letter was sent to Grace's parents, which ultimately led the police to Fish. Mrs. Budd was illiterate and could not read the letter herself, so she had her son read it to her. The unaltered letter, complete with Fisher's misspellings and grammatical errors, reads as the following.
Oh, no. Okay. All right.
My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894, a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma with Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there, he and two others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned, the boat was gone. At the time, there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all children under 12 were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. A boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body and sold as a veal cutlet, brought the highest price. John said they stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. And on his return to New York, he stole 2 boys, one 7 and one 11. Took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times a day and night, he spanked them, tortured them to make their meat good and tender. First, he killed the 11-year-old boy because he had the fattest ass and, of course, the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except the head, bones and guts. He was roasted in the oven. All of his ass boiled, broiled, fried, and stewed. The little boy was next, went the same way. At the time, I was living at blah, blah, blah address right beside. He told me so often how good human flesh was, and I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June 3rd, 1928, I called on you at such address, bought you pot cheese and strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her on the pretense of taking her to a party. You said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers, and I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run down the stairs. I grabbed her and said I would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook it, and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body.
Oh, my God.
I did not fuck her, though. I could have, had I wished. She died a virgin.
That makes me feel ill. I'm sorry, is there more?
No, that's the end of that.
Oh, thank God. That's one of the worst things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
That's disgusting on so many levels. So this is the mum reading, like the son is reading this to the mum.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh. Was he?
I told you it's
you really
by far the worst thing I've ever heard or ever read.
Oh my God. You went in.
Mm-hmm.
You were not fibbing. So was he like that Hong Kong stuff? Is that true?
Look, these are all just letters from him. No one's ever gone and,
okay. Yeah.
confirmed.
Regardless, like it doesn't matter if it's true or not. Like,
yeah.
Oh, it makes me feel sick.
I think what's the hardest part of all of this is the casualness and the fact that you hear it's like listening to the tapes of a murderer talk about the details. And all jokes aside, everyone, I would normally not dwell on these sorts of things, but this is really unique to this story.
Yeah, definitely.
I find.
I actually really enjoyed the way you read it because that's just gives that just, Oh, I didn't sleep with her though. Like I could have, but I didn't. So that's all good.
Yeah.
Like why would you've just talked about eating her. What the fuck? Like, yeah, it really just goes to show how not okay this person is.
Yes.
And that's what I find fascinating.
Very disturbed.
Yeah.
So obviously the police investigated this letter. The story, as you asked, concerning Captain Davis and the famine, all of that in Hong Kong could never be verified. It obviously wasn't really their priority at the time.
No, yeah.
But pretty much everything else of what was said around Grace, from the little that they could do, was well and truly confirmed. So
great.
Now, the letter was delivered in an envelope that had a small hexagonal emblem with the letters NYPCBA, representing New York Private Chauffeurs Benevolent Association. A janitor at the company told the police he had taken some of the stationery home but left it at his rooming house at blah, blah, blah address when he moved out. The landlady of the rooming house said that Fish had checked out of that room a few days earlier. She said that Fisher's son sent him money and he asked her to hold his next check for him. William F. King was the chief investigator for the case. He waited outside the room until Fish returned. Fish agreed to go to headquarters for questioning, then brandished a razor blade. King disarmed Fish and took him to police headquarters.
Good.
Fish made no attempt to deny the murder of Grace Budd, saying that he meant to go to the house to kill Grace's brother Edward originally.
Perfect.
Yeah, Fish said
That's
it
a
never.
good defense. It's like, right. I never intended on killing Grace. It was just, I changed my mind. I was going to kill the boy.
I just, like you said, I can't imagine being the son reading this letter to your mother. I can't imagine being Edward knowing that you were the originally intended victim. Like all of this is just, there's no words. There's nothing that we can say. This is
definitely not
the most heinous thing I've probably ever read. Fish made no attempt to deny the murder of Grace Budd. Like I said, he went to go kill Edward. Fish said it never even entered his head to rape the girl, but he later claimed to his attorney that while kneeling on Grace's chest and strangling her, he did have 2 involuntary ejaculations.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So I think...
Yeah. Oh.
All of this is stemming right back from that young age, that connection of pain and sex and pleasure and you know, if that is all you're taught.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, if that is all you're taught.
How do you know different? Yeah, how do you know any different?
This information was used at trial to make the claim the kidnapping was sexually motivated, thus avoiding any mention of cannibalism, which I just, why? Put it all out there. Now, there were other crimes discovered after Fisher's arrest. So, Francis Mcdonald. During the night of July 14th, 1924, a 9-year-old Francis Mcdonald was reported missing by his parents. He failed to return home after playing catch with his friends in the Port Richmond neighbourhood of Staten Island. A search was organised and his body was found hanging by a tree in a wooded area near his home. He had been sexually assaulted and then strangled with his suspenders. According to an autopsy, McDonald had also suffered extensive lacerations to his legs and abdomen, and his left hamstring had almost been entirely stripped off its flesh. Fish refused to claim responsibility for this, although he later stated he intended to castrate the boy but fled when he heard someone approaching the area. McDonald's friends told the police that he was taken by an elderly man with a grey moustache. A neighbour also told the police he observed the boy with a similar-looking man walking along a grassy path into the nearby woods. Francis's mother, Anna McDonald, said she saw the same man earlier that day. She told the reporters he came shuffling down the street, mumbling to himself and making queer motions with his hands. Queer, by the way, is not what we know queer to be today. I saw his thick grey hair and his drooping grey moustache. Everything about him seemed faded and grey, hence the grey man.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense.
So, hence being known the grey man. The McDonald murder remained unsolved until the murder of Grace Budd, when several eyewitnesses, among them the Staten Island farmer Hans Keel, who we spoke about earlier, positively identified Albert Fish as the odd stranger seen around the area. They did seek an indictment against Fish for the boy's murder. At first, Fish denied the charges. It was only in March 1935, after the conclusion of his trial for Grace Budd, and his confession to the killing of Billy Gaffney, which we're about to go through, that Fish confirmed to investigators that he also raped and murdered Mcdonald. So,
great.
All right. Billy Gaffney.
I love how you're like going into it. You're like, okay, this was the topic I chose.
I'm going to quickly go through it. I'm not going to read the letter because there is another letter. And to be perfectly honest, I'm feeling sick just even.
Oh, I don't know if I could actually handle another letter.
No.
I'm sure. I mean, yeah, we can link it in our socials though. So if any listeners want to read it, I'm not
going to read this letter aloud, but out of respect to Billy Gaffney and his family, I don't want to gloss over other victims, but I'll just quickly give you the description. It's not the description, the points of Billy Gaffney, and then we'll move on.
No problems.
On February 11th, 1927, 3-year-old Billy Beaton and his 12-year-old brother were playing in the apartment hallway in Brooklyn with 4-year-old Billy Gaffney. Billy and Billy. I like that. Two friends named Billy.
Nice.
When the 12-year-old left for his apartment, both younger boys completely disappeared. Beaton was found later on the roof of the apartments, and when asked what happened to Gaffney, Beaton said the Boogey Man took him. Now, Gaffney's body was never recovered. Initially, serial killer Peter Kudzanowski was a suspect in the boys' murder. Then Joseph Meehan, a motorman on a Brooklyn trolley, saw a picture of Fish in a newspaper and identified him as the old man who he saw on February 11th. The old man had been trying to quiet a little boy sitting with him on the trolley. So this is Fish, obviously. The boy was not wearing a jacket, was crying for his mother, and was dragged by the man on and off the trolley. Beaton's description of the boogeyman matched Albert Fish. So police matched the description of the child to Gaffney. Detectives of the Manhattan Missing Persons Bureau were able to establish that Fish was employed as a house painter by a Brooklyn real estate company during February that year. And that on the day of Gaffney's disappearance, he was working at a location just a few miles from where the boy was abducted.
Too convenient.
And there follows a letter, which I will not read.
Who did he you may have said, who did he send the letter to?
Gaffney's mother.
Right. Okay. So same MO, like same. Yeah. Right. Got you. And I would imagine that it includes the same kind of things.
It's even more graphic, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
He goes into a lot of detail about what he did with the body and how he ate it. And it's just, I think we've had enough, everyone.
Yeah. But we will post the link. Like, if you want to go for it, go for it. But holy moly.
Now, Gaffney's mother, Elizabeth, visited Fish in Sing Sing, accompanied by Detective King and two other men. She wanted to ask him about her son's death. And you've got to just, any mother that can pull themselves together to, do what Elizabeth did, I don't know how you do it. But Fish refused to speak to her. He began to weep and asked to be left alone. After 2 hours of asking him questions through his lawyer, James Dempsey, Mrs. Gaffney just gave up. She was still unconvinced that Fish was her son's killer. So she's not totally on board with that. Wow. Now, trial and execution. Let's move on, shall we?
Let's get to the part we're all looking forward to.
Part.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I can't even think. There isn't a good part. Wow.
All right. So after Albert Fisher's trial for the murder of Grace Budd began on March 11th, 1935 in White Plains, New York, Frederick P. Close presided as judge and Westchester County Chief Assistant District Attorney Albert F. Gallagher. Okay. God, can we get over these? Just call yourselves Bert. I love Bert.
Bert, Bill, Bob.
Yeah. Now, Fisher's defense counsel was James Dempsey, who I mentioned earlier, a former prosecutor and one-time mayor of Peekskill, New York. The trial lasted for 10 days. Fish pleaded insanity.
Of course.
No shit.
Yeah, no shit.
And claimed to have heard voices from God telling him to kill children.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, several psychiatrists testified about Fischer's sexual fetishes, which included sadism, masochism, flagellation. The list just honestly goes
Just
on.
anything that you like, literally just get a dartboard of every term for any of those like,
What do I feel like today?
Yeah, and not disgusting. That's the wrong word, because in the right context and the right people, but in terms of his behavior, like, yeah, just throw a fucking dart at the board. What am I doing today? Oh, I'm going to eat some poo. Cool. Pop it on the list.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, some of the ones that are listed are like exhibitionism and voyeurism. And hey,
sure.
all of that stuff done consensually and everything, that's
Absolutely.
fine. But,
Yeah, do it.
but again, very different time.
Mm.
Dempsey, in his summation, noted that Fish was a psychiatric phenomenon and that nowhere in legal or medical records was there another individual who possessed so many sexual, quotation marks, abnormalities.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, this is a horrible story, but it is a really interesting, fascinating culmination of a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely.
The defence's chief expert witness was Frederick Wortham, a psychiatrist with an emphasis on child development who conducted psychiatric examinations for the New York criminal courts. During 2 days of testimony, Wortham explained Fischer's obsession with religion and specifically his preoccupation with the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. Wortham said that Fish believed that similarly sacrificing a boy would be penance for his own sins, and that even if the act itself was wrong, angels would prevent it if God did not approve. Fish attempted the sacrifice once before, but was thwarted when a car drove past. Edward Budd was the next intended victim, but he turned out to be larger than expected, so he settled on Grace. And although he knew Grace was female, it is believed that Fish perceived her as a boy.
Okay, so he thinks that's fine. If he goes, if I just imagine that you're a boy.
Yeah.
This guy.
Now, Wortham then detailed Fisher's cannibalism, which in his mind he associated with communion, body of Christ. The last question Dempsey asked Wortham was 15,000 words long.
Okay.
Detailed Fisher's life and ended with asking how the doctor considered his mental condition based on this life. And Wortham simply answered, he is insane. Gallagher cross-examined Wortham on whether Fish knew the difference between right and wrong. He responded that he did not know, but that it was perverted knowledge based on his opinions of sin, atonement, and religion, and thus was an insane knowledge. And we've spoken about people with schizophrenia and all sorts of things where to them it is completely normal, logical. How their brain functions is very, very different, and we have to at least respect the fact that their brains are built differently, so their reasoning and logic is sound in their mind.
Yeah.
After all that, they still asked for 2 more psychiatrists to support Wortham's findings.
Jesus Christ. Are we not in consensus here? Like, can we not just send this guy just to the depths of somewhere and throw away the key?
The first of 4 rebuttal witnesses was Minas Gregory, the former manager of the Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital where Fish was treated during 1930. He testified that Fish was abnormal but sane. Under cross-examination, Dempsey asked if all the lists of things indicated a sane or insane person. Gregory replied that such a person was not mentally sick and that these were common perversions that were socially perfectly all right, and that Fish was no different from millions of other people, some very prominent and successful, who suffered from the very same perversions. There's a whole lot of right and a whole lot of wrong with this, but anyway.
So what I do see, though, is he's said that he's insane.
Yeah.
And they're trying to prove that he's not, so that he gets the maximum sentence and doesn't just get put in. I'm on board now.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
The next witness was the resident physician at the Tombs, Perry Lichtenstein. Now, Dempsey objected to a doctor with no training in psychiatry testifying on the issue of sanity, but Justice Close overruled on the basis that the jury could decide the weight to give a prison doctor. When asked whether Fisher's causing himself pain indicated a mental condition, Lichtenstein replied, that is not masochism, as he was only punishing himself to get sexual gratification. La-di-da.
Oh. La-di-da. That's a good closing argument.
Yeah. The next witness, Charles Lambert, testified that I can't even say all the things, was common practice and that religious cannibalism may be psychopathic but was a matter of taste, quotation marks, and not evidence of psychosis. The last witness, James Vavasour, repeated Lambert's opinion. Yeah. Another defense witness was Mary Nichols, Fisher's 17-year-old stepdaughter. She described how Fish taught her and her brothers and sisters several games involving overtones of masochism and child molestation.
Yeah.
I think, I'm rushing past this last little bit here, but if you are at all interested in law and criminal law and all of this, he is just such a fascinating case.
Yeah.
For all of that, if you can put that to the side, if you're into psychology, for instance, whatever it is, it's just Albert Fish is just one of those mega people of
just the most fascinating.
Contradictions and everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, at this time, I don't think people were able to comprehend the full scope of it all. So we're almost done. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, none of the jurors doubted that Fish was insane. But ultimately, as one later explained, they felt he should be executed anyway. They found him to be sane and guilty, and the judge sentenced the defendant to death by electrocution. So just to clarify, he was not found to be insane. They deemed him fully sane, so therefore he could be executed. Full weight.
Good result.
I've got mixed feelings about that. I get it, but I don't,
I mean, look, when I say good result, I think it's a good result that he was found sane. It could be, sentenced to the maximum penalty. Don't necessarily agree on electrocuting people, but maximum penalties and, the fact that then his victims' families and things like that wouldn't be like, oh, he was just absolutely bonkers. Like, poor guy. It's no, we've judged him sane and he's getting the max. So that's a good result, but I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't love the idea of death penalty.
Now, Fish arrived at prison in March 1935, and he was executed on January 16th, 1936, in the electric chair at Sing Sing. He entered the chamber at 11:06 p.m. and was pronounced dead 3 minutes later. He was buried there. And Fish is said to have helped the executioner position the electrodes excuse me, on his body. His last words were reportedly, "I don't even know why I'm here." According to one witness present, it took 2 jolts before Fish died, creating the rumor that the apparatus was short-circuited by the needles that Fish had inserted into his body. They were still there. Whether that was true or not,
who's to say?
At a meeting with reporters after the execution, Fisher's lawyer, James Dempsey, revealed that he was in possession of his client's final statement. This amounted to several pages of handwritten notes that Fish apparently penned in the hours just prior to his death. When pressed by the assembled journalists to reveal the document's contents, Dempsey just flat out refused, stating, "I will never show it to anyone. It was the most filthy string of obscenities that I have ever read." And that, ladies, gentlemen, and my beautiful people in between, is the story of Albert Fish.
Just the way that you finished that up, you were almost just like, what have I done?
Okay, so I was the one that's like, I've gotten it too easy and I'm going to fuck you all up with a real horror story to snap you back into reality on what this podcast is really about. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do like rainbows and unicorns next week because that was too much.
Isn't someone scared of like comedy films? I wasn't going to do that.
No, look, in all seriousness, I think I'm not obsessed. I don't have a particular fear of anything so much in this story. I just wanted to I did want to give an example of just what humans are capable of.
Yeah,
and
that's
we've done all these stories on these external things,
Yeah,
weather,
true.
bugs, everything is outside of
our
you know,
control, in a
and
sense.
I just wanted to remind everyone, but that and maybe we don't really need to be reminded, but
That's the other side of it. It's like, yeah, I need to remind you that it could be you.
yeah,
But
there's
it's
some
not,
pretty
but it
dark
could be.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really enjoyed that. I think when you can, just listen to it and just, think about it at surface level. If you think about it too hard and too much, it's going to be pretty disturbing and depressing. But I do find it fascinating. So I really enjoyed that story, and I thank you for going in hard and and finding just a messed up story. Woo!
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, all done. Don't worry, next time I do a story, it will definitely not be as graphic as that. So I do appreciate everyone if you've made it this far. You did.
But if you, on the flip side, if you enjoyed that sort of stuff, we can always do more. We're easy. We're open to things. We're
Oh, I
pretty,
will. I will definitely. But I think that was a good one, just maybe because of the accounts. The written letters, I think, is you do not often find those sorts of materials. So anyway,
Absolutely.
glad you enjoyed,
Thank you
Kate.
so much. Thank you for doing that. Oh, I can't wait until next week. I'm going to tell a little story. I won't spoil it. Just make sure you keep subscribed and go on our socials and send us messages. We love hearing from people. So we will, talk to you really soon. Thanks, Dom.
You are most welcome. Thanks, everyone. See
Thank
you next
you.
week.
Bye.
Bye. Oh my goodness.
That you're just the thing at the end, you go,